You are listening to UpTalk with Sean Conahan. The gloves are off, and it's time to have a chat.
Hello, people, and welcome to episode 18 of the podcast. Thanks for joining me. As always, we are brought to you by my awesome sponsors, Dan's Son Photography, Compass Rose Health and Wellness Center in Bedford, Life Shield Fire, Medical, and Safety Training out of Halifax, and of course, the title sponsor for this season is Project Trauma Support. And what I'll keep saying is, if you are ready to truly get better, truly heal, if you are really ready to drop all the anger, the guilt, all these other moral injuries that come along with PTSD, then you need to seek out Project Trauma Support and get yourself on a cohort. Check out all the links on the website, uptalkpodcast.com. Please check them out, and a big thanks to them for helping out the podcast. If you could take a second while you're listening to this podcast and hit the like button, subscribe button, give a rating, leave some feedback, that would be awesome, as it helps us get noticed on social media, as well as giving a rating and leaving some feedback on the Facebook page for UpTalk Podcast. That all helps, and I thank you in advance. As I mentioned a couple episodes ago, if you would like to contribute to the podcast, you can do so now on the website. Go to the contributions link just above the episode link. It'll take you to the UpTalk PayPal account, and you can contribute any amount you would like. Again, not necessary, not mandatory, never will be. But if you would like to do so, that would be great, and will go to help pay for costs associated with running the podcast. As for me, in the last probably 6 weeks or so, I've been really up and down with my mood, had quite a few depressive episodes, have caught myself being really negative, stuck in a negative point of view, and it's been quite difficult to get out of, I must say. But I am aware of it when it happens, and I do, as soon as it starts to happen and I get excessively negative, I can just tell myself that I can change it. I can change my point of view, I can be positive, and I can turn this around, which I've done on many occasions. Also, what's helped is starting positive routines. Now, routines for me are really hard. I find it hard to organize routines. I don't know if you have that issue or not, but I definitely do. A couple things I've tried to do. I've tried to do yoga regularly, something I never thought I would ever hear myself say. Big thank you to Teresa Coulter for opening me up to that world. I have an awesome app on my phone called Yoga Academy. Not a sponsor, but hey, they can reach out if they want to. It's a great program, really easy to follow beginner classes, and I've started doing that, and it's really helped. I find myself feeling really good afterwards. My mind is clear, a lot more positive. That's awesome. So just little things that you can do in your day that can make a really big difference. So that's what I've been up to. Now it's time for the trigger warning. You're going to hear a couple chats today that deal with some difficult content, like always, on the podcast. So, knowing that, make sure you prepare yourself, get into a good headspace, do some meditation, do some yoga, get yourself in a really good place before you listen so that you can get the most out of it. And that would be great, and I hope you enjoy it. We got 2 awesome guests, 2 really fantastic, powerful chats. Let's get to it. First up on the podcast is Katherine Pomerleau. Katherine's a nurse and a paramedic in Ontario, and just recently took over as program administrator of Wings of Change peer support from Natalie Harris. Along with this, she's worked with many organizations such as the Tamaconta Memorial Trust and I've Got Your Back 911. Let's welcome Katherine to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Katherine. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for asking me to be on here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I first got tipped off to you because you took over the Wings of Change peer support group from Natalie Harris. So when I saw that, and I know how special Natalie is, I could only assume that you must be a special human being if she was willing to hand off her baby to you. And then, of
Thank
course,
you.
you're very welcome. And then I got connected with you on social media and saw all the things you were doing. And I mean, it rings true. I think that you are a very special human being. I think that our listeners are going to really enjoy learning about you. So, totally my pleasure.
Oh, I'm blushing right now.
Stop it. Stop it. So, first of all, I know you as Katherine Pomerleau, but apparently you're like running some sort of spy organization, and you haven't changed your name to that yet.
No. So the truth of the matter is I got married in September, and I've been procrastinating on legally changing my name.
No, that's awesome. That's fine.
Yeah.
So now, as we sit right now, you are Katherine
Hamilton. Yeah.
Hamilton. Sorry.
And we'll be Pomerleau legally
right.
when I get my button gear.
All right. Thanks for coming clean. We're good.
No spy action over here. I'm not incognito, so you don't have to worry about that.
Perfect. So for those of us, and I don't know a whole lot about you, and those of us who are just getting introduced to you now, maybe let us know a little bit about yourself and what got you involved in healthcare in the beginning.
Yeah, so I started nursing, I graduated from nursing 15 years ago,
right.
Back before it was a requirement to have a degree. So I kind of got in, I slipped in the last minute, got my diploma in health sciences and nursing. And it's kind of interesting because I really didn't have a desire to be in healthcare. I was at a point in my life where I didn't really know what it was that I wanted. I was like a high school dropout and had gone back, and what kind of pushed me toward that was my family. So my mom, she never completed high school, and she went back to school and she got her GED, and she went into the nursing program.
Oh, awesome.
And was doing really well. And then I have two older sisters who are also registered nurses, and they had just gotten accepted into the program. And while I was in my final year of high school, my parents just decided that I should probably pursue that avenue as well with the changes that were coming. And so that's what I, ended up deciding to do. So it was just more of a suggestion than anything. So there wasn't really a huge passion for that profession initially.
Right.
Until I started to do it.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of changed everything for me, and even more so actually. So I'll tell you about how where my experience led me to go into the paramedic program. So I had been nursing for about a year at this time. So this was, a year into my career, and I had a really traumatic experience. My grandmother, she had been diagnosed with colon cancer, and so I was doing a lot to help to take care of her. So a lot of things with organizing appointments with physicians and organizing, respite care, because I wasn't able to personally take care of her at that time just because of my career.
Right.
And so we went to lots of different appointments. She was doing really well, and, not really sure exactly whether she misinterpreted what one of the doctors had said to her. But, the last time I saw her, we were out for lunch for my cousin's birthday, and I was going to see her the next day, and she was fine. And so this miscommunication, I think she might have thought that she needed to stop her medications, and she had, heart problems and diabetes and whatnot. And so she just, the next day, my grandfather called me and was in a complete panic. She wasn't acting properly. She wasn't able to get herself dressed. She wasn't able to stand up, really, really weak. And so he asked me if they should call for an ambulance. And I said, yes, do that, and got in my car, and I drove probably a lot faster than I should have to their home, which was, I'd say about half an hour or 45 minutes away, and ended up getting there while they were dialing 911. So it took me a little while to get there. They still hadn't called 911, and she had just gone into cardiac arrest at that time. So they throw the phone to me. I'm in the bedroom. I'm, working her on my own on the bed.
Wow.
And trying to, it was just a cluster at this point.
Yeah.
The paramedics, the crew came. It was an advanced care paramedic crew, and they came and they were absolutely phenomenal. We worked on that arrest together, and, I dissociate from that. And I, at this point in the story, now it's that arrest, right? So we worked on that together, and just, how inclusive they wanted me to be in the whole process, and just how compassionate they were. Unfortunately, we were not successful in my grandmother's resuscitation,
Right.
but I walked out of there with a sense of wanting to do something more. And I mean, that came a little bit later, but, just to be included in that, and to be, like every step of the way. Even the base hospital physician, I spoke to him on the phone. He was absolutely lovely. So I was really inspired by the work that they were doing, and it provided me that drive to continue to do something more. And so I moved my career professionally. I was working, you go in the med surg unit.
Right.
I started pursuing getting into the emergency department. So I got into the emergency department, and then within the first year of getting into the emergency department, I networked myself enough that I got into the paramedic program. And then here I am graduating from paramedicine only a few years after I had graduated from nursing.
Yeah, you're like this crazy superhero hybrid nurse paramedic. Wow. So, Katherine, after you went to school and became a paramedic, did you actually work as a paramedic after that, or no?
So on the road, no, but what I did end up doing was I started working for the base hospital system.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with the base hospital system, it provides oversight for the paramedics in Ontario.
Right.
And so I started working for the air ambulance division and was working with them for 5 years in a variety of different roles, including quality assurance, curriculum development up to the critical care flight level. So it was a really, really cool job, excellent opportunity. But I ended up leaving that position in December. So right now I'm just kind of doing some casual healthcare teaching and some nursing in a cardiac surgery intensive care unit, and kind of freelancing it.
Wow. Okay. I hear the little one in the background.
Yes.
How is she? Say hello. What's her name?
Her name is Isabel.
Isabel.
Yes. You want to come say hello, Isabel?
She can say hello.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give her the headphones so that she can hear you. Because she's like looking at me like, what is he saying? So just stand by one.
All right.
Hi.
Hey, Isabel, how are you?
Great.
Awesome. How old are you?
6.
6. Wow. And I heard you're going to watch some shark documentaries tonight.
Yeah.
Do you like sharks?
Yes.
Wicked. Well, I hope you have a great time. I won't keep your mom too long, but I hope you know how awesome your mom is.
Okay,
She's
bye.
awesome. All right. You have a good one, Isabel.
I will.
All right. Bye-bye.
Oh, adorable.
Cool. She is adorable.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, she just wants to hang out at the table and color and draw some pictures for me. So
Perfect.
Yeah, that's all good.
So then once you get into that, what got you sort of tilted towards becoming an advocate for mental health and mental illness?
Oh, yeah. So, so it's kind of a combination of a bunch of different things. So I have had a lot of personal struggles, both professionally and personally. In 2013, a friend of mine actually introduced me to Vince Savoya.
Right.
Because I had done some event planning for an event that had happened with the air ambulance service, and he thought that I would be a really good fit to help Vince with some planning for the PTSD tour that they did in 2014. And so we met, we hit it off, and we ended up, coordinating that event for 2014. That kind of was what spearheaded my interest in the first responder field with mental health awareness.
Right.
Yeah.
And then recently, and of course how I got tipped off to you was you became involved with Wings of Change peer support group when Natalie Harris sort of handed over the reins to you.
Mm-hmm. So through this advocacy work that I've done, volunteering with Tema and just, kind of in the back, repping for other groups, Natalie and I have connected, and we've become like we're kindred spirits. She's like my soul sister. And,
she's awesome,
she's just an incredible soul. And so her and I were chit-chatting last year, so the end of last year, because I was entertaining the idea of bringing peer support to Mississauga because we didn't have anything here. And so ended up taking on a chapter here, and I run it out of the Homewood Health Clinic, and I started that in March. Getting to know the other facilitators, because there's, quite a few different locations right now. there was a few different things that I was helping Natalie with, like keeping everybody organized. Like, we've got a resource hub where, there's templates and videos and, the model and a whole bunch of anything that the facilitators need to facilitate their meetings, just to kind of keep people organized and not have them emailing each other back and forth. And so I started, doing small little things to help keep things organized for her. And then Natalie, with the publishing of her book and the expansion, like the fast expansion of Wings of Change, has been incredibly successful.
Right.
She just had too much on her plate. And so she asked me if I would be interested in taking it over. And the obvious answer for me was yes, because I had, some amazing peers and colleagues that are facilitating meetings and were super with it and organized and could function pretty independently with some support on the side. And so it was just a really easy decision for me to take that over. And I'm, very grateful and thankful to her for even thinking of me for that opportunity, because, it wasn't anything that we had discussed. It just kind of just asked me one day, and that was how it all happened.
Right. So I know that listeners, if you've listened to a lot of episodes, we've heard a little bit about Wings of Change when it was getting off the ground with Natalie. Maybe, Katherine, you could maybe give us a refresher of what Wings of Change is all about, where people can get involved.
Absolutely. So Wings of Change, the peer support program, is something that is a safe space. It's a stigma-free environment where people can just drop in. There's no attendance taken, and what we do is we ensure that we're providing fellowship and education to those who are coming to these meetings. So there's a formalized part of it, but everybody has an opportunity to provide a share on a topic that is kind of pre-selected from input from the group. So people will anonymously submit some topics that they want to discuss, and we'll pick, randomly from those topics, and we'll go around the room and we'll talk, and we make sure that there's no trauma talk in here, because we don't want to be victimizing or traumatizing or re-victimizing and re-traumatizing people that are in attendance. And we also have a no cross-talking policy. I think Natalie might have mentioned it before in one of the previous podcasts that you guys had, but we want to make sure that while, let's say, Sean, you're attending one of the meetings and you have the floor, it's your opportunity to share, that nobody else is going to be interrupting you or interjecting with something to say. People are going to be actively listening to you, and they may nod their heads, but we don't want people answering directly or even referring to other people's share. And the reason for this is that we want to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable in their share. And we really want to keep this as, like I said, as safe as possible for people, because sharing and opening up is already a very vulnerable place to be, and we don't want people to feel more vulnerable in those situations. Right.
I have actually, you know what, Katherine, I have a question for you. So this is something I want to ask about. And I know that Jamie McWhorter, who runs the PTSD Buddies, has run into this situation before, and you probably do as well, running a peer support system. Obviously we all, when people either before they post or they talk, maybe, you give trigger warnings.
Yes.
You always have all that stuff, but how far do you go with it? Because I know that I've seen situations where anything can trigger anybody. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you don't know what's going to trigger somebody. How do you respectfully go about trying to police that? Do you know what I mean? Because you'll get people that you will get some people who are triggered by things that you would never even have imagined that would trigger somebody.
Yeah, and that that can happen, and people can be triggered by all sorts of things. The story could be similar to theirs. That person might look like their patient. Like there's just so many different variables.
It's
and
tough.
So, if somebody, because it's so natural sometimes to go to that place where you want to talk about the trauma.
Right.
So if that does start, what I do with my groups, and I've encouraged the other facilitators to do that with their groups, is just, as a facilitator, we kind of premise that when we first start the meeting. It is like there's readings that we do at the very beginning, and that kind of sets the groundwork, sets the framework for the expectations of what's going to be in the meeting. And I let them know that if trauma talk or crosstalk happens, that I will, I'll politely remind them. And usually what I do is I raise my hand while they're talking. Yeah. And sometimes, if it's a good point, I'll let it go through. But then I will just remind everybody that, we want to keep this a safe environment for everybody. So I'm just going to encourage you to refrain from the trauma talk and or no cross talking. And then, if we have a small group, sometimes this happens as well.
Right.
And people want to have more intimate and casual conversation. And so when that is occurring, what I will do if it's a small group is, we have an hour, so we can wrap up. We can wrap up our meeting a little bit earlier, go through a few different topics, wrap up the meeting a little bit earlier, and then have more casual conversation.
Right.
Can you just hold on for 1 second?
Yeah. Isabel's going crazy with the coloring.
Okay, no, she's waving a plastic bag in front of the microphone and I don't know what she's trying to do right now, but
that's all right. It's okay.
Stand by. This is stuff that'll be edited
real life.
out, right?
This is real. As real as it
gets. This will be edited out.
No, I'm leaving this in.
Oh, come on.
Oh, this is real life. I love this stuff.
It totally
This is family stuff.
And of course, she's hiding now because she's like, she knows that mommy's
of
about to get serious.
6-year-olds are good at hiding.
Well, and she's trying to talk to me while we're talking, and I'm
she's being
I
awesome.
can't.
She's fine.
She just wants mommy's attention, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
It's that love, right? But it's hard to listen to.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about when you're 6.
Multitasking, right?
That's right.
Isabel, sweetheart, can you do me a favor, please? Can you not wave the plastic in front of the microphone because it makes noise? But not only that, can you be kind enough to wait until I'm finished so that we can have some time?
Okay.
I love you. Can I have Virginia?
Perfect. That was a parenting moment right there.
Pardon?
What's his name?
His name is Sean.
Oh.
So,
Yes, I meant to say that before I handed over the
Sean Coates.
Sean Conahan.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's a
you
funny
think
last name.
She's trying to read it off the screen. Okay, sweetheart.
Nice.
Time for you to skedaddle. I
All
love
right.
you.
We're getting back at it. We'll get you out of here soon. So, Katherine, I'm going to ask you a question which I didn't tell you about before, but I just want to know, what are some things that you do for yourself, for self-care, that you find helps you and your overall mental health?
Wonderful, wonderful question. So, it kind of has this ebb and flow because I go through episodes of depression here and there.
Right.
And so, I really try to implement, as many aspects of self-care as I can into my routine, but that always, even with the depression and anxiety, that is an ebb and flow process too, because sometimes they're just not motivated.
Right.
Talking to my peers, the peer support has been instrumental.
Right.
To my well-being. So even as a facilitator, and I've attended a couple of different peer support groups now, and I'm going to be, going as an attendee to some other peer support groups so that I can get that fellowship myself. Because even as a program administrator, I need that too.
Right. For sure you do.
Yeah, and it's really, really important. And so there's that aspect of it. I like guided meditations. I'm really
very good.
Really, really bad at doing meditation solo without, some support right now.
Oh, me too. I totally suck at it. I'm not good at it at all.
So there's some really, really, really great podcast or YouTube videos that you can get to guide you through all sorts of different emotions. And so I'll often, put those on before I go to bed, or if I'm feeling really stressed out, I will put one of those on as well and just kind of listen to it. So for anxiety, I like to read. So right. I read some books. So the last book that I just read was Tribe by Sebastian Junger, and it was an incredible book. And I actually recommend that you read it. It's a very quick read. I got it done in 2 days. But so I could talk about that book all day. But to continue on, the aromatherapy, if I didn't already mention that. So I love to, put on different scents of different candles, just like whatever I can, and go for walks and try to be active. Like my husband and I try to get out camping a few times a year. Like we just got back from the Arctic. I was camping on the tundra in Nunavut in June, like May and June, and that was just the most incredible experience ever.
Wow, that's not what I think of when I think about someone going on a camping trip.
That's
not what comes to mind.
Yeah, well, we go to some really interesting places.
Nice.
So we've done a few pretty awesome rock climbing trips down in Utah and Nevada, and we're hoping to get out west to do some rock climbing out there. And I'm hoping to venture into doing some ice climbing this winter. It's
wow.
something I've never done before, but my husband's been climbing for more than half of his life, so he's very, very good at it. So I hope to be getting out to do some of that. So just like physical activity, which although I really have to admit I suck at being as active as I should be.
It sounds like you're pretty active, Catherine. I got to tell you.
Oh, no. Well,
Doesn't sound like you're lazy.
no, I'm busy. I'm
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah.
So, that aspect of self-care sometimes gets negated. So, and spending time with my daughter is a really big thing too. Like she's been instrumental in my recovery and has, been my little rock star and has been my, right by my side. And she's so good. So good with me. Yeah. So, and it's good, obviously you have to have mental health conversations that are age appropriate.
Right.
She's, she understands it very well for a 6-year-old. So it's good to have that. But yeah, I think one of the biggest things though is the connection with peers, whether, it's a phone call or a coffee or going to peer support, finding a network that's around you that you can access, or just implementing that in your life will help to make, some healthy choices for you.
Perfect. Thank you for those tips.
Problem.
I definitely will make note of them for sure. So, what else you got going on there in the Hamilton Pomerleau world? Are you doing anything else? What else you got to go?
So, what am I doing right now? I just feel so busy.
Well, you were teaching first aid today.
Yeah, no, I was. I had the privilege of teaching some foster parents today, some emergency first aid and CPR, and so that was really, really good experience. So that's something new that I've started doing, just because when I left my position, my full-time position, it was to put more of a focus on myself and my family, and I wanted to have a better control over my work schedule. So, it's been financially straining in some ways for us, but, for my mental health overall, I think it's been a really good decision.
Right.
And so, I have started teaching that. I also teach ACLS. So I've been an instructor for 7 years now. So I do that on a casual basis.
Cool.
I work casually at the hospital. I just recently did my very first legal consultation, which was a very interesting experience.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Yeah. What else am I doing? I'm volunteering. I volunteer as much as I can. So, I do all the work I do for Wings of Change is all volunteer.
Right.
And what I've started a new initiative on Facebook called Toolbox Tuesdays, and I see you've shared some of my posts before.
I share whatever I can because they're all awesome. Yeah.
But I want to kind of delve into different aspects of my life that I have dealt with or would like to deal with, or whatever resources that I think would be helpful for other people in their recovery, because it doesn't matter what profession you have or what it is that you do for your life, whether you're retired, your career, your volunteer. There's so many different aspects of life where everybody could improve upon and or gain more information on. And so it's just a platform for me to share information so that other people can hopefully learn new things about themselves, or maybe learn something about the people that they love.
Wicked. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So where can people find you if they want to contact you on social media for you and or Wings of Change or any other pages you may have? How can we find you?
Yeah, so on Facebook, there's Wings of Change Peer Support. That's the main page. There's quite a few other groups that have pages as well, but you can add any of us, all of us, if you really want to. So Wings of Change Peer Support.
Right. Also,
people want to get in contact with me about perhaps starting a chapter in their area. You can email me at WOCPEERS. So that's like WOCP. peers@gmail.com.
Cool.
And that actually would be the best way for people to get a hold of me.
So how many chapters are there now?
We have
skill testing question for you.
Yeah, 14.
What?
Yeah. So
what kind of geographical range?
Yeah, so right now we've got Prince Edward Island, so we're in Charlottetown.
Right,
we've got Miramichi in New Brunswick.
Right.
We've got a whole bunch of various locations within Ontario. That's where the other 12 are.
Wow.
So there's Alliston, Barrie, Orillia, North Bay, North Durham, Mississauga, Chatham-Kent, Kitchener, Brantford, Goderich, Northumberland, and Peterborough is going to be starting in September, which I'm super excited about because that's my hometown. So I'm really, really excited to be actually launching that meeting with the facilitator there. So that is exciting. I've been recently approached about somebody from Quebec is looking at it, but
Right.
someone from the Yukon has messaged me. They're interested in doing it there, and a couple of people. So we have a closed group within Bellwood Health Services,
Right.
and they do a weekly meeting with their inpatients. And I did a visit with them last month actually,
Right.
and helped to facilitate one of their meetings. And so there's a couple people there that are really interested in bringing something out to the West Coast. So in British
Yeah, we
Columbia.
need to get some stuff out to the West Coast.
Yeah,
For
well,
sure.
it's interesting. I do a lot of work in the I've Got Your Back number one calendar, so I've been
Yeah.
adding a lot of different events. Right now, the only thing that I've found so far, and I haven't done a ton of research into it, but is the OSI CAN program in Saskatchewan.
Right.
And so, I'm right now actually just entering all of their dates into the calendar up until the end of the year. They don't know that yet, but they will find out.
Yeah.
So although being a program administrator for a peer support program, I think that peer support should be shared across the board. I don't care,
Yeah.
what organization, I shouldn't say I don't care. Let me reframe that. I care about the organization, but it doesn't matter to me that you're another peer support group, because to me it's not a competition.
Right.
I think that it is, it's amazing the work that these people are doing. I've put in Project Trauma Support, all of their meetings. I put all the meetings into the calendar as well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I talked to Manuela. I'm actually going to be meeting her next week in Perth. So
Have you met her yet?
No.
Oh man, get ready.
I'm super excited. I can't wait to feel that energy and be able to, to learn and to be able to share with her. It's going to be incredible.
It's you. Yeah, I can't even begin to tell you. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that when they have their women's cohort, that I'll be, able to get it.
Oh, that's great.
Because, so there's aspects of my life that I've certainly recovered from, but there's still a lot of things that I still carry with me. I face a ton of adversity in my life, and I still have a lot of struggles. And so I think it's important to take that time to provide self-care. And so that will be one of those steps. So it'll be good to, have a week away and be able to find that fellowship with other people and actually see and experience those programs for myself. I'm still trying to find that niche and even on the Toolbox Tuesdays, I tried the equine assisted learning, and that was incredible. And it's funny because, there's a lot of people that are, but why would you go to that? That kind of stuff is hokey pokey. There's a lot of people that think there's hokey pokey stuff out there. And even if you think it is hokey pokey, just keep your mind open. You never know.
Lean into it.
Yeah.
As Hal Hughes would say to me, lean in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got to stay in. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm open to learning about other programs and sharing that information on social media so that people can find other peer support groups as we grow. Having a collaborative effort in peer support actually adds to that fellowship. And there's so much that we can learn off of each other right now. With taking over the Wings of Change, we've kind of halted any big expansions over the summertime. And that's so that I can, get, in touch with all of the current facilitators and get to know how things are going, support them in what they're doing, but also, kind of formalize the program itself. So I've drafted up some guidelines that are based off the Mental Health Commission of Canada's best practices for peer support. And so I've drafted that up, and I'm about to work on a framework, just to kind of formalize everything for Wings of Change, because it's growing so fast. And I just want to have everything in place to be able to support new chapters as they grow. Because it has grown so quickly, and so going back to the Wings of Change out in the West Coast, so we're looking to expand out there, and I've had some interest in the United States. I've had some interest in the UK, Australia, but those are still discussions that need to be had before we even venture out into international waters.
Well, you guys have done an incredible job. It's amazing.
You.
But two things. First of all, when you come back from Project Trauma Support, sometime we're going to have to have you back on so you can tell us about your experience, because I'd love to hear what you thought of it afterwards, having been there myself. Secondly, we should let me know, because we should get you in touch with Teresa Coulter and Jessica Vanderhook, because they are so chomping at the bit to get some things going in that part of the country that I'm sure that they would lend a hand.
That would be lovely. You know what? I listened to one of your podcasts recently where they were both on, and I have to say it was incredible to listen to their stories, and I would be
they're awesome.
So grateful to even be connected with those people.
Oh, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, let's do that for sure. Absolutely.
So, as you know, this part of our chat, I always end off like this. So, Katherine, if someone's listening right now that's struggling, what would your message be to them right now?
So one thing that I think is really important for people to hear and understand, and I'm kind of echoing the words of Jason McKenzie from the Mental Health Warriors, is that, for those of you who are struggling or who have struggled, just know that I have struggled too. And if you ever want to talk to me, I promise you that I will not judge you.
That's so important.
It absolutely is.
That's a big fear. One of the biggest fears of being judged.
It is, and it's part to do with there's cultural stigmas, there's social stigmas, there's personal stigmas, but I think people are really, really afraid at the end of the day to even admit to themselves that they're sick.
Oh yeah, and for sure, because then they have to do something about it.
Well, and exactly, so those words, they need action, and so when you actually say those words out loud, it's not an easy thing to hear or tell yourself or even tell other people, and I completely understand that. But many people, unfortunately, are in denial that they're even in denial that there is something going on, and just know that there's other people out there that are just like you, that have faced adversities and can be there to support you. And you would be surprised that if you were having that conversation with somebody you love, somebody you trust, you'd probably be more surprised to find out that they're going to be more supportive toward what going through than what maybe you perceived would happen.
I think we always think it's going to be worse than it is.
Oh, for sure.
Almost all the time.
I know people that are afraid to speak up because they're so worried about what other people are going to think about them. And to be honest, Sean, I've gotten to a point, it's not that I don't care about what people think about me, but I don't care as much about what people think about me and what people think, is going on in my life, and, what I post on social media versus what is reality. And, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to tag onto other people's negativity and those negative emotions. It's just something that I don't have time for anymore, because I don't draw that into my soul, because I'm totally an empath. I feel other people's emotions, and that weighs on me. And I've kind of made a conscious decision to separate myself from that negativity. Another thing for your listeners too. So, really big part of people are struggling with, and what inhibits them from getting help, is substance abuse. Right. And so there's a really, really good YouTube video by a gentleman by the name of Johann Hari, and it is called Everything That You Knew About Addiction Was Wrong. I think that's what it's called. Really? And I posted it on the Wings of Change Facebook page, because I like to share other resources besides, just things that are specific to first responder mental health. I think overall mental health should be covered. But yeah, he had this quote that just really resonated with me, and it is, the opposite of addiction is connection. And
addiction almost makes you feel like you're connected, but I guess you're not.
It's it's a way of dissociating and isolating those feelings away from reality, and it's short-term, temporary, and unfortunately leads to so many different so many other different issues in socially, financially. There are lots of different impacts that addiction can have. But if you connect with others around you and find those support networks, be honest with yourself and face your emotions, you won't have as many struggles with addiction.
That totally makes sense.
Totally. And if you are someone who struggles with addiction, I have addiction problems like that. We can probably talk about that on another podcast episode. For sure. But right now my biggest vice is alcohol. I love beer. I love coffee booze. I'm not a drunk by any means. But we and I mean, I'm using the word drunk loosely. Because I don't binge drink. I think my husband and I have maybe had one night in the last, I don't know, 10 months where we've we made sure that we weren't going anywhere the
Right.
next day. But I like to have social drinks, and if I'm feeling upset, I'll have a drink, and it just kind of I do it every day. So I'm technically termed as an alcoholic, but like finding these different aspects of connection in my life over the past few years while I've been going through my journey of recovery has made that less of a go-to for me, if that makes any sense.
Makes total sense. Well said, sister. Very well said. Katherine, it has been awesome chatting with you and getting to know you. It's been a pleasure. I thank you again for taking the time.
Oh, it's been wonderful for me, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you asked me to join you today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You are indeed a special human being doing great work. And obviously the connections you have up there and being close with Natalie, you're in good hands. She's in good hands. Thank you for doing your work, and I love what you're doing. And if anything,
you too.
if we can be of any service to you whatsoever, anytime, please let us know.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I appreciate it. And again, I'm really looking forward to connecting with some of the people that you think would potentially be good fits to expand Wings of Change, or even just to find fellowship in a different area of the country.
Oh, it's going to happen. We're going to do it.
Yeah. The more you know, the more you grow. Right?
Absolutely. Well, thanks
Awesome.
again, Katherine. Listen, take care of yourself.
Yeah,
and,
you too.
Take care of Isabel. Have a good night watching Sharks.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Shark documentaries all night long.
All right.
All right. Thanks Sean.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey people, I just wanted to take a second to again tell you about an event coming up. The Breaking Barriers First Responder Mental Health Symposium, organized by Tara Vazel, brought to you in partnership by the Paramedic Association of Prince Edward Island and the Tema Contra Memorial Trust. It's going to be awesome. September 15th is a charity auction event, which is going to be wicked. Lots of cool stuff to bid on. September 16th is the all-day symposium made up of an A-list of speakers. It's going to be incredible. And just added on September 14th, before it all gets going, is going to be a screening of The Other Side of the Hero documentary at 7 p.m. at the North River Fire Department. $15 a person. This documentary puts a spotlight on first responders and their families across Canada and New York. It is produced by Enrico Colantoni from Flashpoint, one of my faves, Diana Warmay and Karen Shopsowitz, and is directed by Peabody Award-winning director Karen Shopsowitz. She's awesome. All awesome people. If you are at all able to get out and see this documentary, if you are a first responder, if you know a first responder, you need to get out and see this. It shows the other side. When the uniform is off, the toll that these jobs take on the first responders and their families. It's awesome. I've seen it. I watched it in Halifax. It's incredible. Get out and see it. And I hope to see you at the symposium. I'm emceeing the event. Can't wait. For more information, check out the Breaking Barriers First Responder Mental Health Symposium Facebook page. Hope to see you there. Next up on the podcast is my brother, Jason Burd. Jason is a firefighter in Ottawa. Is also a Project Trauma Support alumni. He was on the cohort that I attended in December of 2016. That's where I met him. And settle in, because this turned into a long conversation. A really important one, though. We talk about everything from volunteer and professional firefighting, the mental health treatment system that Jason went through, the whole therapy dog process that Jason went through, and, of course, Project Trauma Support and many other things. Awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope you do too. Let's welcome this awesome human being to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, brother. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, Sean. Sure nice to hear from you.
Oh, it's awesome to hear your voice, brother. I miss you very much.
Yeah, it's, every time I go to my happy place in meditation, I think about all you guys, and it's certainly when I saw your face at the cohort last December, I felt as I was in a place of a celebrity because I had seen you online in my on my pass on Facebook. I came across you. Yeah.
Well, when you came up to me, because you came up to me to introduce yourself, because you recognized it from the podcast, it totally put me at ease because I was really anxious, really nervous, and as soon as you came up to me and said hi, it was like all that went away, and so I thank you for that.
Yeah, certainly it was really incredible to make connections like I did with people like yourself. Each and every person that we were with, everybody is amazing. So.
Oh, for sure. And we're gonna get into that in a little bit, the whole Project Trauma Support experience. But first, Jason, for people who don't know you, give us a little bit about you and your upbringing, and your origin story and how you got involved ultimately with the fire service.
Sure. Yeah. Growing up, my father was a Metro Toronto police officer, and he did a number of different things, and one thing was he worked undercover in the drug squad, and as a result, he kind of had some workings with different bike gangs, and for example, at some point there was a hit put out on my dad, and of course I never knew about this.
Whoa.
And yeah, so my dad they had his license plate, and he was basically guarding our house like at night when he should have been sleeping.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of, like, I never knew what my dad did, other than I was super proud of him being a police officer. I was just like every other kid on the block that just thought it was a cool thing that he did. I never knew how his job affected him. So that is a unique thing that I do have, that I guess under my belt, is the experience of somebody. My dad suffered, basically his entire life with something he didn't know he necessarily had up until recently being diagnosed with PTSD himself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So growing up, as you and I both know, a lot of people can tend to use alcohol or drugs to self-medicate, and in my dad's case, he tended to use just alcohol, and as a result, it was kind of a difficult situation.
Yeah.
At home, just because at that time I never understood why my dad would get so angry. Now that I've kind of gone full circle and lived it myself, I realized, actually until my experience at Project Trauma Support at the cohort, I held a lot of anger towards my dad for like certain behaviors he had when I was a kid, and to be honest, I wasn't able to let go of those things until I really understood what was actually going on for him. It seems like every week, every day, I learn something new, and it gives me new perspective on not only myself but on other people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely. And, what made you, obviously, you come from a EMS family, so what made you lean towards the fire service?
I guess I was smarter than my dad. That's why I chose the fire service. No, just kidding. That's just a shot, because I know other first responders will be listening to this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But no, my dad is a retired Toronto police officer. My brother is a York Regional police officer. My grandfather was in the military, and for me, I actually just in high school I took an interest to fire service, and I was a co-op student in grade 12 here in the east end of Ottawa, and I absolutely loved it. Like, I loved the guys. They actually changed who I was, like gave me confidence, because it's kind of a sink or swim atmosphere, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So they really helped build me at that age, and I decided that I would interview a few fire chiefs in in Ontario, and I went and talked to them about how I could take the steps of becoming a full-time firefighter. So I was able to, at that time, determine that a trade would be a good asset.
Right.
And I had an interest. Starting when I was 4 years old, I worked on cars with my father doing restorations and repairs. So I decided I would get my mechanic's license. Right out of high school, I started as a volunteer firefighter with Cumberland Fire Department, which at the time was the eastern part of Ottawa before amalgamation. And I also started with a GM dealer. So I started to get my mechanic's license.
Right.
I worked really hard for the next 5 years, and I went to the Ontario Fire College. I took all kinds of courses and as well became a grandmaster technician for automotive repair. And I knew that, like, I'm a 6'6" fella.
Yeah, so, you're a big boy.
So the truth is that me underneath the hoist is not really that functional, if you know what I mean. So,
yeah.
So I knew that career was not probably best suited for me. So that was, I knew that it was a stepping stone towards the fire department. And when I was 23, I started full time originally with the Cumberland Fire Department, which was a small fire department. It is interesting for me when I look back, the tight-knit group that we had, the ability that we had to make input, into the tools we used. It was extremely progressive, the fire department. Like, we had a pure support group. We had a minister that would come in and do debriefings after situations.
Oh, excellent.
One of my buddies, another volunteer firefighter, was killed in a traffic accident on the way to a call, and it was after incidents like that we got together and they brought in this specialist, and he would go over things with us, and I can tell you that was about 20 years ago. Yeah. So if you look at where many services are today, there are services that aren't even at that point.
Oh, yet. Many. There's many of them. But I mean, like Jason, when you were going through this, I mean, obviously you might have a different perspective on it now, but when you were a young firefighter going through, the minister would come in and debrief these situations, did you buy into it, or did you kind of blow it off, or were you really into it?
What I would say is I was definitely into it, and I remember the pain. This firefighter that was killed, his father was a full-time Cumberland firefighter.
Oh, wow.
He was, he was sort of next in line to become full-time. Obviously, his father became part of Ottawa Fire Service, and so it just couldn't have been more difficult. And just to be able to be we were all in one of the particular stations, and, we just had a big circle time, and we were human, and we were able to show emotion, and it's because we were a small fire department, tight-knit group. Everybody knew each other. If Jason was having a bad day, people could tell. People knew, and they'd say something. So there's a lot to be said for having a tight-knit group.
Well, it sounds like, you guys were certainly ahead of your time then, because not many agencies back then would have been doing that.
No, definitely not. And when I think of, for example, different fire services down in the U.S. where they call, instead of it being like a fire hall, it's a firehouse.
Right.
And a firehouse is a full-time fire station. A lot of the times those guys spend maybe their whole careers in one station. Right. And, which may seem a little strange for training, maybe cross-training, but the truth is that if I'm in a station with Sean for 20 years, well, I know if he's having a bad day. And that goes a long way for being able to guide each other, being able to, know when there's things that are going south, for each other. And, when I look back, we amalgamated with Ottawa in 2001.
Right.
And all that I can say is that a lot of my skills that I had got rusty. Eventually, that became a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, at what point in your fire career did things start to get tough for you emotionally?
So that is an interesting question, because I first of all, I wanted to touch on something that
go ahead. Yeah, for sure.
a lot of people ask, and that is, often you hear people say, "Oh, we should do different screening so that we know that we have people that are able to cope." And you hear people say, "Well, he signed up for it," and all the things that basically people see on TV, all these fake police and fire and paramedic scenes that are basically not real, and then they figure that our careers are the same. And what I can say is that I knew what I was signing up for. As a volunteer, I went to all kinds of very, very difficult incidents, and I'd already starting at 18 years old, I had already seen a lot of things, and I had experienced a lot of things. And what I can say is that people don't understand that it's the effects of our careers that we weren't prepared for. I don't think any of us really had an understanding of the impact of our chosen careers, the traumatic events that we would be witnessing, how they would affect our brains and our bodies.
Oh, for sure. Didn't think about that.
As a kid, obviously, I had no idea about what that was like. So that sort of brings me to a number of incidents, but one particular one, September 19th, 2006.
Right.
I was working. So we had amalgamated with Ottawa in 2001, and right away they sort of needed a person, which was me, to transfer into Ottawa. So I was working close to the market area in a pretty busy station.
Yeah.
And we got called to a townhouse fire that was pretty routine at the beginning. So we were designated a roof sector, and so we were on the roof, and we had worked and cut a ventilation hole.
Right.
And they were doing a tack on the inside, and we were basically checking for extension into a secondary unit, because it was an end unit.
Right.
And basically, as a team member, this is a very important part, is that we have to trust each other. We have to, we require, just like all emergency services, our officers or leaders need to use the eyes and ears of their team, and trust that when somebody has a certain perception, that they maybe should act on it. Because in my case, I basically had told my officer that I felt that the roof was getting dangerous, and that we needed to get off. And basically, there was another officer who was a lieutenant. It was my captain that I had told that to, and there was a lieutenant that was sitting by the ventilation hole, and he had a hose line with him. And basically, I realized that all of a sudden there was about a 20-foot flame coming out of that ventilation hole, and I realized that he was obviously in imminent danger.
Right.
And so I went to him, and there's actually photos of the incident, and there's kind of a picture of me kind of doing what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
arms out, like, what are we doing?
Right.
And then the next one is me going to him, and basically I grabbed him by the air pack from behind, and I just said, let's get the fuck back. And I started to bring him back, and then about maybe 4 or 5 steps, he went through the roof, and yeah. So I was able to hold on to him, and I had two partners from my pump crew that saw what was going on. So luckily they came to help me, and so one of them held on to my air pack, and the other one sort of helped get a hold of this other firefighter, and he was a really big guy. The gear itself is 75 pounds on top of the person's weight. So
right.
the truth is that knowing about construction and basically lightweight construction of a house, there really is no reason why the trusses held the 4 of us.
Right.
And it was just a complete inferno. And the truth is that all 4 of us probably could have plunged into that night, and I guess that would be the pinnacle moment of change. I would say sort of led me down a very difficult path, which took years to sort of transpire into what it has.
What did you find? What started happening with you after that? Like, looking back now, what would be your symptoms?
Just interesting. For example, the next morning I went home from work because it was a night shift, and like I had said, my tools got rusty, but that's because I wasn't getting exposed to any progressive or training that could help me at that time. So
right.
So literally, like, we just finished. Well, whoever was going in ambulances went in ambulances, and then we just went on with our night. We got our truck back in service, and away we went. Like
right.
The tactical, we always have tactical debriefings after large incidents, and when I went to that, I was pretty furious about what obviously had happened and the fact that we almost lost our lives. And I sat there and listened to each officer from each truck and, district chief, and each of them speak, and all that they would talk about is all the good things that happened.
Right.
And not once was the actual fact that 4 people almost died. Not once was that brought up. It wasn't for years later that I found out that the safety officer that was on scene actually had a presentation, and he was told he wasn't allowed to give his presentation.
Really? Did you ever hear of what the motive would have been behind that? Why he wouldn't have been able to?
Well, from my perspective, and my perspective is it was a pretty fucking scary scene, and and basically my feeling is, like, let's not talk about it. Like, let's just pretend this didn't happen. And
wow, total denial.
Total denial. So, the best way to there's never any discipline for anything that ever happens. That really impacted me. That nothing positive was coming out of such a close call. So what I can say about myself, the next morning after the night shift, I went home, and like a lot of people, my wife at the time was pretty worried about what I did for a living. Because of that, like, I've always been the type of person, like, I don't paint pictures for anybody else. Although I've told you about that incident, like, I don't paint pictures. And in this particular case, I decided to not even tell her about it. And I thought I did it to protect her.
Yeah, we all do. That's exactly why we don't talk. Yeah.
But what ended up happening was she found out about it, obviously, maybe like a week later. And so that was kind of the starting of, she really felt that I wasn't communicating.
Right.
And the truth is that it's not scientific how relationships happen or how they stay together. But what I can tell you is that right away that day, you know, I went to my bedroom and I cried. Like, I cried all day. Like, that's what I decided to do. I never realized that was the starting of isolating and of trying to persevere. And when I look back, you know, that was really the starting of the end of my marriage. You know, I was a licensed mechanic. I also went to school and learned how to do construction.
Right.
So I built a house on a rural, like, acre and a half property.
Yeah.
So I had just built this house. I just had gotten married and I just had a son. And then, you know, I had a son in 2005. And then this incident happened, and that was the starting of unraveling. And my son was 18 months old when I went through the divorce with my ex-wife.
Yeah.
So I never thought that would ever happen to me, and it really did rip my heart out because I had this, you know, I grew up in a family of two siblings and parents that were together. Even though what my dad went through, you know, my mom always stayed by his side.
Right.
And, you know, that was extremely difficult to have this. I guess it felt like a failure to me, you know. So,
yeah.
So so that was the starting of a snowball. You know,
right.
if you think of all this PTSD and reaction to trauma as a snowball, that was the starting of it. And it started to build over the years. Because of the divorce, I had to sell this house, that a 2,100 square foot bungalow that I just poured all of my blood and sweat into.
Yeah.
And so I had to sell that. And by this point in my life, like, I'm 41 years old now, that house would have been paid off because of the rate that I was paying it. And it's a, you know, $750,000 house. So when that's the one thing that people don't really understand is the financial impact that our careers have on us. You know, like, we may get paid well when things, I guess, are going well.
Right.
But when you have a traumatic injury that develops into PTSD, there really is no bottom to where you can fall to. I feel that I'm definitely one of the fortunate ones, because I know people that have gone from my career to the street.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So, and I know that's common within other first responders and military. So to kind of get back to myself, I kept forging ahead, and because I guess I'm an achiever and I'm a perfectionist. You know,
that's all you know how to do, is to keep going.
Yeah, that's right. Keep going.
Yeah.
And I kept persevering, and I guess I didn't have the knowledge to know that I was going down a very slippery slope. And so I can remember in 2010, I went to a car accident, an incident, and when I got out of the truck, my sleeve got caught inside, and I twisted my back. And basically, within a minute, I felt my heels were falling asleep, and within half an hour, like, I had lost the use of my legs. And so I had this significant back injury, and I got misdiagnosed, and I got worse for about a week. Then I went in a wheelchair to my own doctor, and he's like, you need an MRI of your whole spine. and he was going to send me to the States because it wasn't being, I wasn't being taken care of properly. But long story short is that I basically had swelling and tension around my spinal cord, right in the middle of my back.
Right.
And it squeezed it off. And over the next month and a half, I lost about 25 pounds of muscle off my legs.
Wow.
So I was stuck in bed. And that's when psychologically things started to come more unglued.
Yeah.
And what I could say is I couldn't sleep because of the pain. I was trying to deal with WSIB, but I was all on my own. And the medication that they were giving me, like literally, it was so strong that I could barely talk. So,
Jason, why were you on your own? Was there not a whole lot of support as far as guiding you through this process, like from the fire service, or?
Yeah, what I would say is we're really, really awesome at raising money for different charities.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we're, and I can't say that all of us, because there are I consider a lot of people my brothers or sisters, being close. But what I can say is that there is a bit of a falsehood to my perception on what that meant, on what I would do for somebody else,
right,
versus how maybe I would be treated if I was sort of in a situation that I was in. And partly, we're all the tough guys as far as I'm good, I'm okay, I can tackle this. Well, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I couldn't tackle that. And but what I can say is that one thing I don't want to forget is, and I'm going to touch on it a few times, is the physiology, the connection between the injured brain and the body. So that incident, my brain and my body were stressed to the max before that happened.
Right.
So all that I can pretty much guarantee you that would not have happened if I wasn't already suffering the effects of a serious traumatic event.
Right. I mean, you were already weakened.
That's right. And so my back was, so at this point, I have no permanent injury to my back. I don't have a herniated disc. I don't have anything.
Right.
That happened solely through basically when I think back to it, it's okay, you don't want to listen to your brain. You don't want to get help. Okay, now you can't walk. Now you can't walk. So deal with it. And that's when, like I said, a lot of anxiety started to build, and obviously depression started to become a factor because I was literally stuck in bed.
You were forced to deal with. Your body forced you to deal with it.
Well,
or forced you to at least come face to face with it anyway.
Yeah, and I guess when I say perseverance, maybe that should have been a breaking point for me, but it wasn't. I ended up getting to a place called the Canadian Back Institute, and basically the first day that they saw me, they're like, "You're never going to be a firefighter again." And I said, "We'll see," and basically they started out with, I had nothing left, no core, no nothing, and they started out with Kegel exercises. That was my starting. It sounds a little crazy, but basically over the next 3 months, I had a regime that I had to follow, and by the end, I was carrying 120 pounds up 60 flights of stairs.
Oh.
And I was running, I ran a race, and I proved that I was more than ready to go back to suppression as a firefighter. So I went back, and I'm certain that I was in as good a physical condition that most guys were in. So then I continued to work for about another year. Again, I was under a lot of stress, and I went to a fire. It was around Christmas time, and I was pulling ceilings on the second floor, and I was basically covered in combusted material, as well as insulation from the attic, which was cellulose. And basically, it was a very cold day, and when I went outside, nobody decontaminated, which is basically washing the contaminants off your gear, because once you're soaked, then you're freezing.
Right.
Yeah. Basically, what happened was I took off my mask and I sucked in a lot of, I guess, contaminants into my lungs, and within hours I started to get sick, and my lungs got really, really sick. I ended up in a situation where I was sort of panicking. I knew what had happened, but again, I'm trying to be the tough guy, so I go to the doctor and I'm like, oh, this is, I need to get some antibiotics. Like, I didn't know what to do. So I ended up in the hospital, and so it wasn't until a couple days that I talked to my captain, and I was like, I need to, I'm at the general hospital, and they may be putting a scope into my lungs, so I need to put in a WSIB claim.
Right.
And basically at that time he told me you can't. And the reason why was that we didn't decontaminate, and basically nobody wanted to get blamed. So it put me in a very difficult situation, and now, years later, I realized that was all part of what developed into a moral injury. It's sanctuary trauma that many people experience because of the paramilitary organizations that we work for. There's often this type of treatment, this type of people are afraid to basically get in trouble. So again, I got sick. It developed into asthma. It's a permanent thing with my lungs that if I'm exposed to any smoke or any chemicals, they start to basically get infected, and I get asthma as a reaction. What I realized more recently is that when you're stressed, you're also not breathing properly. When I was at that point, if you can think of, I was just so tense physically,
right.
And when you're getting sick from something in your lungs, and you're just sort of not taking proper breaths, yourself as a paramedic, you know what's going to happen. You're going to get more sick.
Yeah.
So that's when I spent probably about a month literally not sleeping at all. I was up all night, and it wasn't until more recently that I learned from a very special woman, a doctor that we both know, Dr. Manuela Joannou, that a person that, your average person, the average everyday person, that if somebody doesn't sleep for a week, there is potential for somebody to have psychosis as a result of a lack of sleep.
Right.
So you and I both know that there is a whole lot going on for me, more than just a lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I was experiencing psychosis. And what I can tell you is that all of the psychosis that I was experiencing was related to different traumatic events that I suffered as a firefighter. And it also was directly related to what I now know was sanctuary trauma.
Explain that if you don't mind, just because I don't know much about it either. Explain sanctuary trauma for me.
From the two incidents the incidents that I kind of explained to you surrounding leaders that I felt didn't do what I was hoping they would do.
They didn't have your best interest.
Yeah, so a big theme of my PTSD is being left behind.
Right.
And the sanctuary trauma was basically like, if I was good to go and I was ready to rock and roll, like at work, maybe the officers had my back, but the moment that I had some injuries, I was just left to the wasteland. I guess that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And sanctuary trauma can be many different things, but for me, that's the angle that affected me the most, the feeling left behind. And I've learned since then that if we can think about two military groups that have two different leaders and they experience the same firefight, the same bad guys are trying to kill them.
Yeah.
One officer, being a damn good officer, pairs his team before, during, and after the firefight. As a result, a much lower percentage of those individuals get PTSD, where the other group that has maybe a poor leader, and when I say a poor leader, this may be somebody that's suffering from the effects of trauma, maybe PTSD themselves.
Right.
So I'm not saying that they're, maybe some people are just not good at their job, but other people may be suffering from their own issues.
Right.
They may have their own things in their life that are holding them back from being able to make good decisions, safe decisions.
Yeah.
And so as a result, like I eventually one night it was probably 2 a.m. I was sitting in bed because I couldn't even lay down because I would sort of drown myself with my lungs. And all of a sudden I was sitting there and I realized I had pain that was radiating into my arms, and the chest pain was so incredible that I was certain that I was having a heart attack, because obviously I dealt with a lot of anxiety up until that point.
Yeah.
I was pretty used to what that felt like, but this was something completely new. So I called 911, and it's kind of like everything seemed to be like a shitstorm for me, because the two guys that showed up to help me, I realized like they were new to the job, and
right.
I was sort of thinking that I was having a heart attack. Right. So for that, when they were started fumbling with the blood pressure cuff, and I was like, here, let me do that.
Yeah.
I don't blame them, because they're just young guys. It put me into more of a panic. Basically, I ended up into Ottawa General, and they sort of did a run up of my blood, or of my heart, I should say.
Yeah.
Everything was working fine, and that's when they told me that it was anxiety attack. Basically, that's the point that a doctor in the emergency basically talked to me about what was really going on.
Okay.
And that's when basically she was like, boy, it really sounds like you might have PTSD. And
had you ever considered that up to that point yet?
No.
Really?
Like literally, that was the first time that I was kind of like, I kind of had my eyes wide open, and this was kind of like a weekend, and like I said, it was like 2 a.m. So what happened was the emergency doc was like, I'm going to get you assessed for PTSD, like for psychiatric issues, because I had told her about the psychosis that I had, all the stuff that I was suffering from. That became another difficult part of my journey, and it's because they put me into an assessment area, which is basically a jail cell.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like with a steel toilet, like that you see on TV, and they left me there. And
wow.
When you have somebody that has PTSD that I didn't even know that I have, and you put them into a cell and you leave them there, like I was just starting to boil and starting to get more and more anxious. And finally it ended up being a psychiatric nurse that did my assessment. So by the time he came in, I was quite agitated.
Yeah.
And, I was basically saying, I want to see this person or that person, because I knew that other people had come to the hospital, and they wouldn't let me see anybody, and maybe that's protocol, I'm not sure. But
certainly didn't help you at the time, though, I'm sure.
No, like it was causing me more and more panic, and so then, like, I didn't know what was going on. They left me there for longer, and then eventually these security guards came into the cell, and they threw like the robe at me, and basically they're like, put this on, and I was like, okay, like, am I allowed to see so and so, and basically, like, there was 3 or 4 of them, and basically it was like, put this on or we're going to put it on for you.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, guys, like, I will put it on, but you guys need to realize that someday maybe you and I are going to be colleagues, or you're going to go on to be maybe you want to be a police officer or something, and you really can't treat people like you are right now, and basically they really didn't have any idea of what they were doing to me. So of course, like, I'm not a stupid guy, so I put on the pajamas. And then next thing, a nurse comes in, and it was like a horror film. A nurse comes in with a big needle, and basically she's like, getting this, and I'm like, no problem. Like, so I rolled over, and she injected, and boom, like, I was out they put me out for like 20 hours or something.
What?
So
Jason, how long after this was happening to you, how long did it take for you to get a diagnosis of PTSD?
It was probably close to another 8 months to a year.
Whoa.
And the reason why is, and this is why we need to help our brothers and sisters that are out there that may be struggling, that you don't want to go down the road I did, because what happened was, I got admitted into the psychiatric unit at the Ottawa General, and when you have all these symptoms that are really kind of out of whack, then you're dealing with an emergency psychiatrist, right. and their job is to treat the biggest symptoms. I've learned more and more that there isn't a vast amount of knowledge to do with PTSD.
Yeah, certainly.
In the psychiatric field, I find that it's tough to find somebody that has a lot of experience. So when somebody is in a situation where they realize that something is wrong, they really need to get into the right person. Eventually, I got into a psychologist that specializes in PTSD, and that's when I got my official diagnosis of PTSD. But before that, I had a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Then I had a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder.
Right.
Then they changed that into major depression with psychosis, because you can also get psychosis from a very, very bad depression, which
right.
I had. It wasn't until, because it was extremely difficult to get into see Dr. Shelley Jordan, who is here in Ottawa, who specializes in PTSD. Eventually I got in to see her, and that's when she kind of put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and she diagnosed it at that time as delayed onset PTSD.
Don't you find it weird, Jason, looking back, because I'm hearing what you're telling me, at how many people, potentially, how many people could have caught that, or could have put that together earlier to go through everything you went through? It just seems like, man, someone should have caught that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you know what? I guess I'm quick to, being a type A personality like many of us are, and being like this achiever that wants to persevere, and all those things contributed to the level of sickness that I got to. So
right.
So you're right. If I had somebody that was like, Jason, boom, like, this is what you got to do. Like, you got to put the brakes on this. Like, now, if I had somebody way back when I was going to marriage counseling with my wife.
Do you think you would have listened, though? Did you think if someone said it to you way back then, you would have listened?
Maybe if they had, for example, I would go to sessions with my wife, and I would just be a zombie. I literally, at the end of a session, I'd be like, I don't remember one thing that was said.
Right.
And, and I was like, I'm here to save my marriage. And I did change many things that they identified that I needed to change. You know,
Right.
I changed to try to save my marriage, but the truth is that I was just getting too sick. So then I had a really bad experience in the general psychiatric, and I'm going to be the first guy that if somebody reaches out to me tonight, I'll get in the car and I'll drive them straight to the Ottawa General. Or, you know, when somebody is in an emergency psychiatric situation,
Yeah.
the only place that you can get immediate psychiatric medication is sometimes at the hospital. And when you're in an unsafe situation, I know that that's the place to go. So I don't want to say that I shouldn't have went there.
No.
But my stay there was extremely difficult. And
I'm sorry you went through that, brother.
Yeah, someday I'd like to make more change. You know, if you could picture somebody laying in a hospital bed, and straight ahead of them is that clock, you know, from public school.
Yeah.
You know, that clock that goes tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
Well, you lay on that bed for 2 weeks straight, looking at a clock straight ahead of you.
Yeah.
And what I can say is that everything in the room is white. After a little bit, the time is not counting. You know, it's counting down instead of up. To me, it's just not conducive for somebody with PTSD. It's not conducive for somebody to
It's
get
not the right
better.
environment. It's not the right environment to deal.
Even any, for me, any psychiatric illness, you know, there's not enough. We don't have any psychologists within our hospital systems. We don't have any hands-on people that actually care. You know, my psychiatrist kind of talked to me from the hallway. You know, you know, I could go on for a while about the bad experience I had, but
well, you know what? Let's you know, we can shift it a little bit because I want to talk about one of the. I mean, I'm gonna guess here, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. But one of the more positive outcomes of everything you've gone through is I want to talk about Blaze.
Yeah, for sure.
Only because when I was at Project Trauma Support with you when I met you, Blaze was with you, which is your service dog, and it was the first time that I had been close to any real trained service dogs. All I can say is that it was very impressive. These dogs are amazing.
Absolutely. After I went to the Ottawa General,
Yeah.
I eventually ended up in Homewood,
Right.
which is a private hospital here in Ontario in Guelph.
Yeah.
And they're known to be one of the top hospitals in Canada for treating PTSD.
Right.
And I went there. I was extremely sick, and the first 3.5 months that I was there, I was basically doing stabilization.
Right.
And that's where I first sort of, I guess you could say, met my first 2 service dogs.
Okay.
So then I returned to Ottawa for 1 month, and then I went back again for something called the PTSR program, which is post-traumatic stress recovery program. And that's where I actually, in the room next to me, there was a service dog.
Okay.
And that's when I started to learn a little bit about what a service dog could do. But what I could tell you is that I was really too sick to advocate for myself. I felt like I couldn't fight my way out of a wet paper bag. You know. So for me to get on the phone and email and that just, there's no way that could happen.
Right.
So it's kind of something that I had I put that in the back of my mind.
Right.
And then eventually I actually tried to reach out to that person because I had their email address, but it just didn't. It may have changed and that didn't pan out. So, but I did remember where she got the service dog.
Okay.
And that was in Winnipeg. There's a company called MSAR Service Dogs.
Okay.
And that's where Blaze is trained. So George Leonard from MSAR Service Dogs has been training service dogs for 25 years, and he absolutely is one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world, for this specific thing.
Right.
Like for him, PTSD service dogs are kind of the step one. Then the autism dogs are kind of, they take a little bit longer to train, and then the seizure detection dogs take about 3 years to train, but they'll detect a seizure 20 minutes before it happens.
Wow.
These dogs are absolutely incredible, and if anybody is interested in checking it out,
yes,
if you look at msar.ca or like on Facebook or online, it's incredible the things that he's able to do. So
what kind of sorry, Jason, what kind of dog is Blaze?
So Blaze is a standard poodle.
Right. Yes.
And she's black and white, so she's actually called a party poodle.
Nice.
Because he's been doing it for a very long time, he's kind of gone down the road of using all different types of dogs.
Right.
And including dogs that were rescued.
Yeah.
But at this point, to make the most appropriate and sort of easily trainable dog, he uses a standard poodle, Labrador, or sort of a retriever, or a lab, or a mixture of those three.
Right.
So that's what he likes to start with as a puppy, and then so a PTSD service dog from them can do up to 75. There's 75 different tasks.
Really?
That it can do just for PTSD. So basically what George does is he puts each person into like a criteria. So, it could be, if it's childhood trauma, well, that person tends to need certain things.
Right.
So each service dog is custom for the individual, depending on what the most significant symptoms are.
Huh. How old was Blaze when you received her?
It's kind of that's a long story. I received her younger than most people do.
Okay.
Most people receive them usually around a year old. So Blaze was younger, and you know how I told you I went through a real horrible storm. Well, part of it was that I was chosen to get a service dog, and this group in Orleans had raised $10,000, and then. It's a long story, but that all got messed up, and then I was back at square one. So so at that point, I was like, I don't care, I'll pay for it myself. And that's when George kind of found out about what was going on. I was so fortunate in 2016 to win the Elijah Harper Service Dog Award. Elijah Harper was a prominent politician from Manitoba. He was a chief, he was actually a mentor of George's. George is a Canadian Indian.
Right.
He actually tells me that I'm supposed to call him a Canadian Indian, not, even though it feels strange.
Right. Yeah.
That's what he told me the proper term is, or at least I don't know if he's messing with me, but, so long story short is, that was the first time that I felt like something is turning around. I won this award, and it's the equivalent of between a $20,000 and $25,000 dog.
Whoa.
So yeah, that's when I was just like all of us, I was like, wait, somebody else could have won this, and I don't deserve it. And I have this amazing service dog in my life named Blaze, and literally it was from one of my friends. We were going through different names, and he was like, what about Blaze? And I'm like, perfect, that's the name. And little did I know that she would be blazing me a new trail. And what I can tell you is that Costco was something that I did. That's where I would shop, once every 2 weeks, the quietest time. And from the anxiety, the PTSD that I was dealing with, when I would go to Costco at the quietest time when nobody was really there, I would be literally sick physically to my stomach for 12 hours. And that just became a norm that I was used to. And I was just like, this is how life is going to be. And when I got Blaze, I think it took about 2 months for me to realize. And all of a sudden I was like, hey, wait, I'm not being sick. I'm no longer being sick. You know, Blaze by that time had her like public access, and she was going everywhere with me.
Right.
And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like, Blaze she's not fully trained. She's not certified. This doesn't make sense. But what I can tell you is that it certainly does make sense, because it happened. And the magic that I can't even begin to explain, you know, when they talk about a sixth sense, it's incredible how Blaze will react to my anxiety level, to what's happening in the environment around me, to loud noises, to like how she will push up against me. She'll, you know, if my anxiety gets too high, she may tell me basically it's time to go outside. You know, like
she'll nudge you towards the door, or?
Yeah, like she'll kind of, she may stop. You know, she may stop and sort of sit down, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And then basically what they've taught me, because it's kind of different, being that, you know, they want the service dog to be with the person as soon as possible, and they train the individual and the service dog together.
Right.
I'm trying to think of where I was going with this.
That's okay.
My brain
That's
only
all right.
works. So yeah, it's a psychological connection that Blaze and I have.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, people with PTSD often have this alarm system in their brain that is constantly going off.
Right.
And it's just constantly shooting our systems with adrenaline, you know, that's constantly draining, and it's constantly causing muscle tension.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
With Blaze, she's got my back. Like, and when I say that, she's like, when I'm in a lineup, she stands behind me, and all that it is a psychological barrier. So she's keeping people away from me. She is the opposite of a protection dog. Yeah. And that's why some certain breeds, or at times, if a dog becomes protective, then it's no longer suitable as a service dog.
Really?
Because their job is to be psychologically connected to the individual, not to pay attention to necessarily danger, you know, or somebody, for example. So in public, that's mainly what she does. She detects and she helps control my anxiety. And you know something, right away, one of the things with an invisible injury that we have, everywhere you go, you look normal.
Yes.
Well, certainly I don't feel normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like we're all crazy, right? So
yeah.
So no, I'm just kidding. But so the one good that I actually like, some people don't like it, but is that Blaze all of a sudden opened up doors for me for people from the public to ask me about her.
Right.
And
it forced you to socialize a little bit.
That's it. I have the choice, you know, depending on how much time I have, you know, depending on how I'm feeling, I may say Blaze is a medical service dog, and I can keep walking. But more often, I take the opportunity to educate, because not only does the MSAR service dogs train PTSD dogs, they're training them for every psychological disorder. They're training them for all different things. So I'm able to not only educate somebody maybe about PTSD or about how Blaze helps me, but potentially how a service dog could help many people that are suffering, you know, not only psychological ailments but physical ailments as well. we're going to see more and more service dogs in the future.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
A big part of PTSD is isolating.
Yeah, absolutely it is. You're right.
And when you're a person that's in the basement alone, and isolating, and you got this service animal that works 24 hours a day for you, they don't have bad days like we do.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, you have a night terror. They wake you up. Certain people prefer to have the service dog will turn on the light, and basically it's resetting yourself, and then hopefully you can get back to maybe a little bit better sleep for the rest of the night, instead of having a night terror for the whole night.
Huh. I mean, when I saw it, you couldn't mistake it at all. When I met Blaze at Project Trauma Support, the bond, the unbreakable bond, even at that point between you and Blaze, I mean, I'm sure it just gets stronger from there. How did you get involved with Project Trauma Support? And just tell me a little bit about your experience, what you thought of Project Trauma Support.
From my time of having Blaze, she kind of led me. I was fortunate enough to, and I'm just leading you into the steps of Project Trauma Support.
Yeah.
Because like I said, she blazed me a new trail. So one of the first things that really was significant was that I did a feature on a show called Color of Duty.
Right. Yes.
It's on Animal Planet on the Discovery Channel, and so they came and did 2 days of filming at my house and here in Ottawa, and they asked me what I wanted to tackle, because they, as part of the filming, they asked me if there was something that I could maybe take a step towards. So I told them that I wanted to go to the fire hall and have a coffee, because
how big a deal was that for you to do?
It was impossible. Before having Blaze, everybody would be like, "Hey, Jason, come for dinner. Come for a coffee, or drop in." That kind of went on for a while, and then because I never did, they probably thought that I'm just being, I'm just pushing them away. So So eventually, I was sort of completely isolated from my team, which a lot of people feel. So through that filming, the chief was very cooperative, and he actually closed down the station to try to lower the traumatic aspect of it, as far as getting calls and all that stuff. And he also allowed me to pick individuals to come in to the station, my friends that were particularly at that incident. So, that connected me back to some kind of key people that I needed to connect with.
Right.
Eventually, a good buddy of ours led me to the meeting in Smith Falls by Project Trauma Support that Hal Hughes was running, the peer support evening. So I remember my first evening there, and I felt sick to my stomach, but I could barely talk at the start, but by the end I was just telling this horrible story that I think some of the things that we've touched on, and a lot of people were kind of in awe, but at the same time, many of the things that I went through, others suffered the same things, and I immediately felt connected, and I immediately heard from somebody else that they went in an ambulance 3 times. And I was like, oh my God, I've been killing myself that I did that for all this time, and all that I needed to hear was one person say that they did that too. And to hear me too, all these light bulb moments started to happen. And then that following week, I lucked into, if you can believe it, it was actually a female that got the opportunity to go on the cohort with Project Trauma Support.
Right.
She was also signed up to something called Soldier On, which is a camp normally only offered to military members and veterans and it's actually to connect people through activities like sports, to basically connect people together. So I was offered this to go to this camp, and that's actually where I met Rob Mitchell and and as well Brandon Hogan. So that particular camp was purely on connection. There wasn't any aspect of treatment. It solidified the point that I really needed to connect with other people that were going through what I was going through. And it really was beneficial in many ways. So that kind of was the step before I started to go to the meetings on Wednesday night, the peer support, and I dragged our friend Rob Mitchell with us. With me, and eventually that sort of, I felt like I lucked in and once again lucked out to be able to attend the program in Perth in December with you.
Yeah.
So it's been an incredible. It felt like a disaster, huge snowball that that I felt like I could never undo.
Right.
And I did go through the full-on suicidal situations. That was partially related to WSIB and the treatment that they gave me. And what I can tell you is that, and I really want people to understand that when the brain gets to a certain level of illness, it just starts to happen. It starts to, you may have suicidal ideations. You may have a full-on plan, but what people don't understand, like the sort of, when I'm saying people that haven't been through it, is that your brain is so sick that it's making these things. These plans are just happening.
Yes.
And it's really important. It's really important for people to understand that 90% of people that commit suicide it's as a direct result of mental illness, and it has very little to do with a marriage breakup. So eventually, I feel that it's very important that we start to understand that this individual passed away as a result of PTSD. Suicide, but as a result of PTSD.
Right.
Just like this individual passed away as a result of a cardiac arrest or cancer.
Right.
Eventually have to get to the point where we're going to celebrate somebody's life and we're going to be okay with talking about it. And families are going to be okay with talking about it and accepting when these things happen. But I kind of went, because the whole point of Project Trauma Support of that program is suicide prevention. So I guess I got a little distracted talking about that, but
no, you're good. You're fine, brother.
So I don't know if you remember the Monday of the cohort, they had talked about the fact that it would be a light switch of recovery.
Right.
And I don't know if I had said it out loud or I just said it in my head, but I said, you're wrong. That's impossible and you're wrong. I showed up at that program and I knew nothing about it. And with everything that I do, I try to keep a complete open mind to anything and to anything that can help me get better.
Right.
So even though I wanted to believe that was true, you have to understand that I've also been through over $100,000 worth of treatment before I went to that program. So I have made gains before that, but very minimal gains.
Right.
And I had depression where I would get up at 7 p.m. and be looking forward to going to bed at 9 p.m. So I literally have spent thousands of hours looking at a brick wall because I wasn't able to read or watch TV. So when I sat there thinking this is impossible, I never believed that on Thursday morning when I woke up, I just couldn't believe how I felt changed, how I felt like a new person.
Yeah.
How I felt that there was a future, that there was a way to cope with what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
and there is many tools that I was not aware of. There was a lot of things that I needed to put behind me, and I did that during that week.
Yeah, me too, brother. Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until that point did I realize that I needed to let go of the anger that I harbored towards my establishment, the Ottawa Fire Service.
Yeah.
You know, the truth is that there may have been some people along the way that kind of hurt me, and it may, none of it was likely intentional in any way.
Right.
But it just manifested into an enormous sword that I was carrying.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that does nothing but hurt everybody, and it keeps you sick. So
yeah, for sure it does.
All these individuals out there, and I've met so many of them to this point. I've had the honor of meeting people that have been hurt so badly, that are so sick with PTSD that they may have been wronged in many ways by their, I call it establishment, may it be the military, maybe, and they're unable to see possibly a different way until people are able to sort of accept, I guess you could say, from our brother Hal, welcome your struggles,
right.
Until you're able to accept that you're exposed to this event, and as a result, this is what happened. You need to find a way out. And what I can tell you is that I found a lot of avenues at Project Trauma Support. And I don't know if you remember when Hal was talking about putting a pencil in your mouth, and how holding a pencil in your mouth eventually forces you to smile.
Yeah, I do now. I remember that now. Yes. Yeah.
And I was watching a show on TV, and the guy was like, "Come on, we need to smile. Everybody smile." And then he's like, "Okay, that's not working. Everybody laugh." And I kid you not, Rob Mitchell is one of my best buddies now, and I can tell you that sometimes we're like, "Hey," he's like, "Hey Jay, let's laugh," or I'm like, "Come on, Rob, we need to smile right now."
Yeah.
And I could tell you that physiology changes your psychology. I absolutely will not watch anything really but a comedy. And there's a reason for that. It's because I need to laugh.
Right.
Because I need to get better. And the only way I can really, the way that I stay happy is I do positive things, and I put purpose into my life, and I stick to things that make me laugh or make me smile. And those are incredible things that for many years, I can tell you that I lost. I lost every single emotion. And people, unless you were there before, you don't understand it. But when you're in the depths of depression that I was in, there was no ability to love.
Right.
There was no ability to be happy, no ability to smile, and I really had no way of climbing out.
Yeah.
And I have this amazing psychologist, Dr. Shelley Jordan, here in Ottawa, that saw me every single week, and she is what kept me going. She helped me with certain parts of incidents that were really troubling my brain, helped me get beyond those. And she helped me survive to a point to get Blaze. And she helped me survive to a point to get to Project Trauma Support.
Right.
I could tell you that I'll never forget, like, the moment of packing up my vehicle, and Rob and I were ready to drive out of the beautiful property, the 260 acres that's part of Project Trauma Support. I just felt like a new person.
Yeah, for sure.
I was driving into Ottawa, and when I talk about our pain is a trap, and our patterns, I guess we develop negative patterns, are a trap. So as I'm coming into Ottawa, I'm realizing that I'm coming into traffic time. So I'm not starting to panic, but I'm planning every route to get around all this traffic, right?
Yeah.
So I call up Rob, and I say, hey, buddy, I'm thinking of going this way to get home. He says, Jason, go straight. And at first I kind of paused, and then I got it, and I'm like, you're right. So I hung up the phone. I went straight, and next thing I knew, I was at home. I was able to greet my beautiful family. And all that I can tell you is that, I need to give myself a constant reminder that in areas that I used to turn left or I used to turn right, I need to go straight. It's the only way to continue on the healing journey.
Speaking of that, because we've now gone through Project Trauma Support, gone through that 5.5-day life-changing experience, and you get home. So now, we've been a little while since December of last year. So what's your life like after Project Trauma Support? What's been going on?
So first of all, I guess in a way, I had pigeonholed my life.
Right.
I had pigeonholed my life that my marriage had crashed and burned. I'll never be married again. And I had met Crystal about three years previously, and on our very first date, I said, if you ever want to be married again, then don't come on a second date with me.
Yeah.
So, and I wasn't, I was just being honest.
Yeah.
Because that's how I felt, and it's part. I guess it's part of being terrified.
Right.
And so all that I can say is that in a very short time after walking out of that experience in December, I realized that I wanted this amazing person, Crystal, to be a part of the rest of my life.
Right.
I asked myself, why am I putting up barriers for the rest of my life? So that's when I went ring shopping. So on January 13th, I had about 75 people at a restaurant in Ottawa, and it just was something that kind of happened because that show for Blaze was premiering that night.
Yeah, I saw the pictures of it.
Yeah, so literally it wasn't planned. I was planning on giving her the ring sometime in the next 6 months, but in this country and western restaurant in Ottawa, there was probably about 300 people there. So they gave me the mic, and as you can tell, I like to talk. So I talked a little bit about mental illness, about how to connect with each other, and at the very end, I had this little sack in my pocket, and I pulled it out of my pocket, and I said, "This is proof that Plenty of Fish works." and Crystal still didn't understand what that meant, because she knew that I would never get married again. So
yes.
I absolutely floored everybody. I gave everybody a heart attack because nobody knew about it. It was pretty incredible. So, that was probably my first significant step. But I can tell you that since December, I've slowly made a plan, very systematic plan of trying to whittle away at all the things that have been building up, that have been holding me down for these years, and I'm slowly trying to unpile the mess, I guess you could say. And something as I own my house since 2008, since after the divorce, and even though I had built my own house, I was never able to even build a deck. It was a new home that I bought, but I just never was able to build a deck because I was just too sick.
Right.
So, and things kind of sort of happened where I was out for a walk with Blaze, and I guess here's where Blaze is blazing me new trail. I saw this house for sale, and it was a private sale, and it was in I've been looking for a quieter house because. Just the door, car door closing or something, it wakes me up. So I saw this house, and it turns out it has this beautiful pool in the backyard and a beautiful plastic deck that I never have to fix. So instead of building building a deck on my old house, I just sold that one and I bought this one.
Right.
So it seems a little crazy to get a deck, but the truth is that I really needed to change my perspective.
Right.
And
sometimes it's all it takes.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to buy a house to do that.
Right.
You just need to take a deep breath. You need to take a look at what's around you. You need to walk in the bush and listen. And I'll tell you, I have a new life, and
sounds like it.
Every day is still a struggle. I can tell you that my life is, it really hurts me when somebody says, "Oh, Jason is still on holidays," or I've had a few people say something like that, and it really does rip my heart out when this is like a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job, I guess you could say, to try to stay at a healthy level, to be able to have, I guess, some function, to be able to be there for my son, and my fiance has a 10-year-old son. My son is 12. And, my beautiful, beautiful son, Des, all these years, I'd never been able to pick up a ball glove because I'd just been too depressed, and I just couldn't do it. And finally I've been able to pick up the lacrosse stick and the ball glove, and we've been throwing the ball and I'm not the coach of any teams and I know that I'm not up to that level, but I'm just at a point where I'm there. I'm able to be there. And
how did that feel when you were able to do that with your son for the first time? How did that feel for you?
What I can tell you is that all the shit that I've been through, really not much of it makes me cry. But when I think about my son and how this has impacted his life, I would instantly start to cry because I didn't realize that young boy was me. Yeah. That young boy was me as the son of a Toronto police officer. Yeah. And so I saw this happening to him. And I remember myself in school not even knowing. I had no idea what my dad did at work. Yeah. Although I remember thinking about, is my dad going to come home today? Right. Is he going to come home tonight? And we lived on a farm, and I can tell you that I would stay up at night, and I could tell by the sound of his car coming down the dirt road that it was him, I could tell his car from a different car, and then I would go to sleep. So my son suffered the effects that I did, and he has a formal diagnosis of ADHD and general anxiety disorder. But what I can tell you is that what that's called is I'm fucking terrified my dad's gonna die. So all these kids out there that their parents are military or first responders, or even maybe somebody that's suffering the effects of some other type of trauma. You know, their kids are suffering the residual effects of, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but vicarious trauma.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So the feeling of being able to reconnect with my son has been incredible. And what I can tell you is that for me, the magic number is 7, a 7 out of 10. When my anxiety is over a 7, that's when I start flashing to anger.
Right.
So, like, that's part of why I had to try to steer clear of sometimes of my son, was to try to, because it wouldn't take much for him to sort of push me over a 7, if you know what I mean.
Right. That's right.
So to be able to control my anxiety through meditation, through all the wonderful tools that you and I have learned, I was able to take some of my life back.
Yeah.
And what I can tell people when it comes to something like meditation, I literally went through hundreds of different meditations, like on YouTube, and it, for me, my memory, my concentration is so affected. It's by what I've been through, that literally, if it's any type of meditation that requires a certain amount of concentration, after about 30 seconds, if it's a mantra, I've already lost myself. And then, it obviously has no positive effect. And I was like, okay, well, meditation is not for me.
Right.
But you and I both know that we learned a type of meditation that first engages the physiology,
right.
which is breathing, maybe some deep breaths. And so for me, engaging the physiology and then engaging concentration,
right.
or I guess in a way, meditation is the ability to relax your brain.
Yeah.
That's the only way that I'm able to have a level of concentration to be able to relax my brain.
Yeah, for sure. I had the same experience. It was the only time that I could feel that it worked, and I actually felt a benefit. And I was actually excited. I looked so forward to the beginning and end of every day, not because I wanted it to be over, but because I knew it was time to meditate. It was one of my favorite parts of the day.
Yeah, I never really thought that I would say that, and that's the same for me.
Yeah.
When I say I got to do my homework, some days, like, that was my go-to. If I was having a really bad day, since December, there are times that I had to do that 3-4 times in one day, and at times 30 minutes of each time, which is really time consuming. But I know that I've been speaking for a lot, but I want to touch on one thing that really impacted me, and I'll never forget. And that was you speaking about forgiveness and about how you wanted to forgive a certain individual. And I can tell you that what you were basically explaining was to me, it was sanctuary trauma. It was the crap that happened to you after you got sick, and you're unable to be the worker that you were before. So I could tell you that I was just boiling, and I was boiling inside. This was on the Thursday of of our program. And
Yeah.
so I went from being peaceful, completely peaceful. My body was peaceful. I had no pain. My brain was completely relaxed. And within 30 seconds of you speaking of this story,
Yeah.
I got tense. And my back knotted up. And literally, at the end of your talk, I started to cry because I was so sad about what had happened to you, and I got angry. That sadness and anger at that time, it needed to come out, and instantly I was relieved, and instantly I felt better. So,
wow.
I now have a different understanding for, when somebody says, I went to this psychologist and, my horrible story made them cry. And you know what? From now on, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
These are pretty sad things that have happened to certain people. And you know what? Everybody is human. And it's okay to cry. And and I've seen it, and it's now, I now realize how important it is to be able to have those emotions. And now, so that was a very, that was kind of, you put me through in a minute what my daily life is like. And so I'm able to keep myself in check with meditation and blaze in my life, and going for walks and hikes, and now, I just went through a move.
Yeah.
So I've been sort of forced to do a lot of things that I wouldn't have done. And not only that, but myself and Rob Mitchell, really identified that the Project Trauma Support peer group in Smith Falls had kind of grown to a point where it was beyond the size of the room.
Yeah.
Like one day we were there, it was over 25 people, and when you're going around a room with 25 people, it kind of limits the amount of time that you have to speak. So Rob and I, a short while after leaving Project Trauma Support, decided that we needed to expand into Ottawa. So every Monday night from 6:45 till 8:45, we run a peer support group. It's sort of in the downtown eastern part of Ottawa.
Right.
And anybody that's potentially listening to this and could make it to a meeting, we'd love to meet them. And I can tell you, I've witnessed it firsthand, people that are literally suicidal, and they come to a meeting and they may not be completely honest about what's going on in their head, but as far as somebody identifies that they're suicidal, well, we need to take certain actions to make sure that they're safe.
Right.
And but what I'm saying is, it's happened where the following day somebody will reach out to us and say, literally, you have no idea how this has changed our lives. And all that I can say to you is, when you have people in the room that are just in a dire situation, like I was in only a short while ago, and then you have other people in the room that are potentially smiling, laughing, and talking about everything that they've been through in a different way, in a positive way, it changes the light. It allows people to see the light.
Yeah.
And
it's a game changer. It's a game changer for sure.
It's an absolute game changer.
Yeah.
And I not only has it been important, I think, for other people, it's also something that I have to do.
Yeah.
I say have to, I want to do every Monday night. And when I say that Rob and I run this meeting, the truth is that each individual runs the meeting.
Yeah.
You know, we're all in it together. And as far as everybody gets an opportunity to speak about what they're going through, and we steer clear of any traumatic things,
right.
Just like we did on the cohort.
Yep.
So that we don't re-traumatize each other, and at the end of the day, people walk out of there going and taking a left instead of going right where they did before. So.
That's so awesome. I commend you guys, because I know you guys have been working hard. I see on Facebook all the stuff you guys are doing, you and Rob especially. You're such a good team, and I know that I saw pictures of you were at Parliament with Bill C-211.
Yeah, and I was, you know, it was amazing to have the opportunity. You know, I've been carrying this challenge coin from the Ottawa Fire Service. I carried it every day with me since I was given it on the job, and it was time to surrender it. So I gave it to Todd Doherty, and he gave me his challenge coin, and I can tell you how much that meant to me.
Yeah, I bet.
And just to hear him, to witness so many people wanting to make a positive change and to make a framework for PTSD across the country.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what that's going to look like, but all that I can say is that it's a step forward.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, it's positive because I certainly would like to see anybody and everybody from across our beautiful country to be able to recover, to be able to be reconnected with their families.
Yep.
You know, and there isn't one solution for this.
No, you certainly have to be open to everything, anything and everything that might help.
Absolutely.
What, Jason? If there's people that want to reach out to you, whether it be to get information about the support group or anything else, if they have any questions for you about service dogs or anything like that, is there a way they can contact you?
Absolutely. If anybody wants to send me a friend request on Facebook, I will gladly do that, and maybe even a private message to let me know maybe just where they're from. As well, I have an email address. It's called fightingtheinfernowithin@gmail.com. And I actually made a hockey card for Blaze that I pass out to kids, or I've done a number of fundraisers where I've done speaking events and I hand them out. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, they can connect with me through that email address. And I'm also on if you go to projecttraumasupport.com,
right.
If somebody wants to go to the peer support listed under Ottawa, you can also find me there.
Awesome. I'll make sure I add all those links, Jason, on my website under your guest info. So now we come to the part of our chat that I ask everybody, and that is, if you could give a message to somebody listening who is struggling right now, what would you say to them?
I would say that you can't give up. There is a way out. You may not be there yet, but you will get there. And you have to reach out and connect with anybody and everyone that you can. You got to stop basically allowing other people to hurt you with a poor understanding of mental illness.
Right.
You know, so what I'm saying is you need to open up with people. Like, a lot of people haven't even told their family members what they're going through. Well, open up and realize that they're going to be pretty confused with what you're about to tell them. You need to accept it. That's the only way that a family member or a friend or, you know, a doctor can actually understand and start to help you. So that's number one. If anybody's listening that may be on the other side of things, or you know what, each and every one of us can do this, and that is connecting with other people, connecting with those that are suffering. So often I hear, I don't know what to say. I know Jason Burd is suffering like a severe mental illness, but I don't know what to say. I don't know what to text.
Right.
The truth is, say what you always said. Text what you always texted.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't stop. Don't stop. You may not get back what you wanted. You may get Sean pushing you away. But people. So what I guess I'm getting to is that you can't give up, and the people around you cannot give up. The only way that I've survived is because of my family and friends and the team of doctors. They're the ones that have kept me alive.
Yeah.
So without all of that,
yeah,
I wouldn't be here today. So
well, thank you for those words, brother. I really appreciate them. I will say that you now have the honor of having by far the longest conversation on UpTalk that we've ever had, which has been awesome. It's been so good. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I'm sure our listeners are enjoying it as well. I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to sit down and talk about this stuff. I know how exhausting it is. Like, there's probably going to be, you're going to have a little bit of time after this where you're going to have to recoup a little bit, just like I do. And
absolutely.
I know it's exhausting. So I thank you very, very much for taking the time. You know I love you. If there's anything I can ever do, all you have to do is say the word anytime at all. But thank you, Jason, for coming on and talking.
You know what, Sean? It's been such an honor to have met you, and I truly look forward to the next time that we get together. Crystal hasn't seen your part of the country, and we want to make our way out there. And
oh, come on out. We'll show you lots of stuff.
And I apologize. Maybe some of the others from Project Trauma Sport are going to get a bit of a kick out of the fact that I talk too much. So so you and I need to...
You lived up to the hype.
We need to call each other and talk to each other, and that way we won't miss each other as much.
No, for sure. So listen, until we talk again or we see each other, which would be awesome, please take care of yourself and take care of your family, and I'm excited for you. Congratulations on the engagement in the house. I love you, and just take care.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate it so much.
No, my pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, totally my pleasure. Thank you. And that's all for this episode of the podcast. Thank you for hanging in there. I know it was a long one. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to my sponsors. You can check out their links on the website, uptalkpodcast.com. Big thanks to them. Thanks again to Katherine and Jason for coming on and telling their stories. And I can tell you that with Katherine, this really was just an introductory chat. You're going to hear her again on the podcast. She has lots of stuff to talk about. Lots of experiences that she's been through in her personal life that she'd like to come on and talk about and how she got through it. So you're going to be hearing from her again in the near future. Also, some other stuff I have on the go. You're going to hear a series of interviews done with the Mental Health Commission of Canada. They have a few people that they'd like to put on the podcast and talk about some different programs and initiatives that they're doing. So look for that soon. It's going to be a little bit before another episode comes out because after this, I'm actually, well, as you know, I'm going to the Breaking Barriers Symposium in PEI, emceeing that. And while I'm there, I'm going to be doing some interviews with some of the speakers. And I'll put those together. Then sometime after that, I'll have another episode ready for you. And then my plan is to pump them out as many as I can between now and the end of the year. So lots more conversations to have, lots more cool people to talk to. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I know I did. Until we chat again, take care of yourself and each other. More love, less judgment.
'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference. And and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.